So, hey guys, today we're talking about Therion, and somehow I've learned a lot more about Therion, just randomly, I guess. So, Therion has a lot of random good parts and bad parts, and it's actually insane how it's hidden in all of this text, right? How many paragraphs is this? Like, three? But yeah, there are so many random kind of interactions that are just sprinkled in all of the Therion cards. So notably, this effect here, sends for cost. So you can send one card from your hand or field to the graveyard, add one Therion spell trap from your deck to your hand. Since this sends for cost, this doesn't work under macro. Not that you probably, well, I mean, not that you would have Lily Borea on the field anyways, because it's pretty hard for you to actually realize this, because how did you summon Lily Borea when macro is active anyways, right? Yeah, so that's one thing. And then Therion King Regulus also sends. So it sends for cost, right? So here, when your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can send one Therion monster card from your hand or face a field to the graveyard, negate that effect. So this also doesn't work under macro. I actually won a duel because I was bluffing that I could activate Regulus the whole time because I didn't realize, but when my opponent activated Shifter, I could not activate Regulus. I just kind of forgot about it. So I was bluffing like my Called by the Grave that I still had and pretending it was Regulus because my opponent did not realize the ruling on this. So I kind of lucked out there, admittedly. And then we have Endless Engine Argyro system. So this card is honestly pretty cool. So notably, the sends for effect. So this works under macro. Not that any of your Therions do anything if they're banished. So send a Therion card from your deck to the graveyard if this card is in your graveyard. You can target a Therion card in your graveyard. If both are still in the graveyard, add either that card or this card to your hand. And if you do, place the other on the bottom of your deck. You can only use one Endless Engine Argyro system effect per turn and only once that turn. So this card is cool in that it does like two things. So firstly, this card can actually stop you from decking out. Well, it can help with that, right? Because this shuffles back. So that's one thing. The second thing is, of course, it can add itself, which is kind of neat because Therion Irregular has this effect. You can discard one Endless Engine Argyro system, destroy all cards your opponent controls. So this is essentially, I guess, like a one-sided Zeus. We could call it that. Whatever. So we can do that, and we can just do it again and again, technically, because this card can just keep being recycled, and we can just do this every single turn. This is an ignition effect, though, so there is that. And then what's also jank is Therion Discoloseum here. When this card is activated, you can add one Therion monster from your deck to your hand, so that part is just pretty normal, pretty whatever. Once per turn, if your monster would be destroyed by battle, you can send one Therion card or one Endless Engine or Gyro system from your deck to the graveyard instead. So this is fully an effect, so this works under macro, which is pretty useful, I guess. And then once per turn, when a monster is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can target one Therion monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. You can only activate one Therion Discoloseum per battle, or per turn. So, yeah. A few things to know about this. So I misread that because I was thinking a few steps ahead. So these effects are soft once per turn, as you can see, just once per turn. So technically, if you were to activate like Metaverse or something like that, you can activate Therion Discoloseum like on your opponent's turn. So notably, the issue with that is you don't get the search to an extent. That kind of sucks. But like you will get the effects to protect and add a card again, just randomly. But I mean that'll probably never come up. I never see this coming up like ever. So whatever. Anyways, so the other thing notable about this is this effect here. Once per turn, when a monster is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can target a Therion monster in your graveyard, so noticeably, sent to the graveyard. That's the weird part. So, for example, if your opponent controlled, like, a token, if you destroyed the token by battle, it doesn't add you anything because tokens do not get sent to the graveyard. They get, like, obliterated. They just stop existing when they get destroyed by battle, right? And then if you were to like attack something under macro or attack any of the little birds, like any of the flu cards, essentially, all of those guys get banished instead of getting sent to the graveyard. So unless you were to negate them, they should get banished instead, meaning you do not get to add. So sometimes this is relevant. It's kind of rare, but when it's relevant, it's really relevant, you know? I think I lost a duel because of this once. Hmm, yeah. So that kind of hurts. And then noticeably, all of the Therion cards essentially have this effect. A Therion monster equipped with this card gains 700 attack. Also, it can activate the second effect listed above as if it were Therion Reperfume. So, uh, these effects, essentially, so for this one, Therion Reperfume's effect is during your opponent's turn. Quick effect, you can target one Therion card in your spell and trap zone, and one card your opponent controls, return them to the hand. So this is like really jank if you think about it very deeply, right? So if these guys were essentially equip spells with an effect like Foom, it doesn't make sense. Like with some of these, notably with Therion Regulus, if this were an equip spell and you like were activating like an equip spell and detached it because it's continuous, uh, does the effect still like resolve? When you think about it, it gets a little jank, but that's not how it works, so we don't have to worry about that. But yeah, if we go back to Foom here, because it activates it if it were Therion Reaper Foom, the effect is still hard once per turn. So all of the Therion effects are hard once per turn. So you can only activate Therion Reaper Foom's second effect or Lily Brea's second effect. I guess this is the better example. You can only activate this uh, overall once per turn. And that, I guess that's about it. But the interesting thing about it being considered like this monster is if you were to MST, you know, because MST negates sometimes, like MST sure as hell negates skill drain, I guess, right? So Therion Lily Brea, if Therion Lily Brea gets sent to the graveyard and then like called bide after getting activated as Therion Regulus's effect, who is actually activating Lily Brea's effect here? It's Therion Regulus. So I don't even remember how this ruling could possibly work because it hasn't come up for me yet, I don't think. But I'm assuming how this would resolve is that if we send like Therion Lily Brea for cost and then it gets like called by, Regulus is going to resolve Lily Brea's effect despite Lily Brea being essentially negated by called by. So that's kind of jank. And also, if you were to actually imperm or negate Regulus, that will end up negating the Lily Brea effect, despite it being Lily Brea effect and not like Regulus effect, which is kind of like neat, I guess, interesting, sure, whatever. And then there's also, no matter what you have equipped, right? If you equipped it by, like, monster effect, your cards will get unequipped if your cards get negated. So, notably with like Therion King Regulus, if you go ahead and were to negate Regulus, and I have it equipped with Lily Brea automatically gets unequipped if Regulus gets negated. I honestly don't even know like the ruling on this, but it's probably related to like the card being equipped by Therion King Regulus's monster effect or something like that. And then it got negated despite the effect having been long resolved. Don't really get that, but okay. So, long story short, you lose your attack that you gain and also the equipped monster. And you wouldn't have been able to activate their effect anyways because it's the monster activating the effect and not the spell trap. And this is actually slightly relevant because if you actually go to Utopia, this is like inverse. So here we have like this. Once per turn while this card is equipped to a monster, you can negate a monster effect activated on your opponent's field. So this effect is actually Pegasus Twin Saber's effect, while it is a spell trap. Whereas the effect of like Lily Borea or Regulus, if they're equipped, are the equipped monster's effect. If that makes sense. So that's a little bit weird, but it's just different, I guess. So in terms of ruling stuff, pretty jank, I guess. And another kind of jank thing, we have Therion Bull-Ein here. So Bull-Ein actually is the only Therion with this text. You can target one Therion card you control and one card your opponent controls, destroy them. So this card is actually pretty sick with the synergy it has. So what you can do is if you have Therion Bull-Ein, like it doesn't matter if Therion Bull-Ein is equipped to something or if Therion Bull-Ein is on the field. Just if we activate Therion Bull-Ein's effect here, or Lily Brea for that matter, we can use this effect to send or destroy Therion Discoliseum, and then it will go to the graveyard. And if you have Endless Engine Argyro System, you can actually search. Well, not search, but yeah, well, yes, search. So you can add Therion Discoliseum back to your hand by shuffling back Endless Engine Argyro System, and then search another Therion, and you just have Therion Discoliseum active again. Not that like you can use the once per battle or anything type effects. It's just not going to happen unless you have a second battle phase or something. So yeah, I think that's pretty damn cool. So this also works with Lily Brea, of course, with Lily Brea sending any card from your hand or field to the graveyard as cost. But the primary issue of Therions in general is just simply one of two things. So issue one, you are unable to get your Therions into the graveyard. So the other one is how bad they are under macro. Those are like two really big defining weaknesses. So the one that I care about most, like not being able to play under macro is fine. Like a billion different decks can't play under macro, which should be nice if we could play under macro, but we cannot, and that is fine. But what is really bad is that all of these cards are essentially kind of bricks in your hand. Like I'm sure we can find a hand pretty quick. Yeah. So if this gets negated, this Endless Engine or Gyro System, let's say we get ashed on this, even if I use Therion Discoliseum, we're doing nothing with this. Our entire hand is completely unplayable. I can't even like set a card, but what is somewhat interesting here is if I have like, if I top deck Ash Blossom Joe Spring or something, like let's say I do top deck specifically Ash Blossom Joe Spring, since I have Therion Discoliseum, what I can do is attack with Ash Blossom Joe Spring in order to send Lily Brea, and then I can Bull-Ein special summon targeting Lily Brea. So that's cool. And you know what's not cool to an extent? Well, the fact that if your opponent has some way to bash cards in your graveyard or remove them out of your graveyard, it's actually pretty horrible. So the issue of this is like, well, with how Therion cards work, because rulings, the all of the Therion cards can special summon themselves, right? So you can target a Therion monster or a plant monster in your graveyard, special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, equip that monster to this card. So the order here is that this card will special summon first and then equip. So even if you banish the card in the graveyard, it will still attempt to resolve the effect as much as possible. Therefore, still special summoning Lily Brea, although the equipping part is not possible anymore, right? So if your opponent, for example, waits on called by, that's what will happen. If they just shotgun the called by, so it's more or less the same concept as if you see Orcus like Harp Horror in the graveyard. You would never wait for like Harp Horror to banish itself or cost, then try using called by on it, right? you would just call by that sucker before it even activates, and then just call it a day, right? Same kind of thing with the Therions, and that goes back to like the Therions needing other Therions in the graveyard, and the the trouble is you can't really put them in the graveyard, and yeah, that's primarily it, I guess. Getting things into the graveyard. I guess it can be summarized like that, but getting things out of your hand is also kind of an issue. Like with the other hand, if I could just drop Foom out of my hand, I have, or not Foom, if I could drop like Bolt Iron out of my hand, we have plays, and that would help us out a good bit. And also, for some reason, I don't know why, but only Therion Reaper Foom can be activated during your opponent's turn, and only this card. But you know what? The effect is pretty good still, so if we have like Foom equipped with Regulus, we can Foom effect to return one of our opponent's cards. So usually it's good to return stuff like field spells so that they can't activate properly. So you, for example, if it were like a Therion Discalcium, you wouldn't be able to use the activate effect to add a Therion card, and you can't activate it again anyways, so now it's just stuck in the hand. And I made this mistake like once. I think I'm just getting worse at this game, I don't know, but I just had amnesia and forgot my opponent's like Raidsoth because I returned it. I was like, yeah, they have like an unknown in hand. Better play around Nibiru, and then like seven bajillion summons later, I'm just like, wait a second, that's not Nibiru. I know that card. It's Raidsoth. Oh yeah. So it must look like I'm BMing hard as hell right now. Damn, I'm dumb. So yeah, a lot of random weird quirks about Therion. And one of the things that's great about them, I suppose, is that they're level 8, which can be used for like Megalith. So that's a good level for specifically the Megalith Quick Play, which I don't quite remember the name of right now. So Megalith Unformed, yep. So you use total levels of twice, or you need to tribute something with twice the total level of what you're trying to summon. So if you're trying to summon level 4, level 8 is pretty good. And also trade-in. Pretty good trade-in targets. So if you don't get ashed or drolled at least, I guess. Notably here, with like Punk, we have like a bunch of level 8s here, so how many 8s do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I would run more copies of Regulus if I had more copies, but yeah. Still, pretty decent for a trade-in, considering trade-in's not hard once per turn, and you also have charge to draw a few more cards as well. Pretty decent. And noticeably, I guess, worth mentioning is that Endless Engine Agura Systems recycling is actually pretty useful. So one of the things that a lot of decks struggle with is like certain decks don't have as good of grind game as others because they can't recycle their traps. This is one of the decks that can. So with Therion Cross being recycled constantly, this is pretty strong because we can banish a monster if they activate their effect or negate the effect. So noticeably, if we were against, like, let's say Sword Soul, if they tried to activate Vishuda, we can just banish Vishuda and we don't have to worry too much about that Vishuda anymore. So that's pretty cool, I guess. And then going over their effects, we have essentially destroy one card you control and one card your opponent controls, except it has to be a Therion card specifically. So DPE, but as an ignition effect, essentially. And then we have Therion Reaper Foom. Draco back, but as a quick effect. Therion Yugioh. While you control an equip card, Therion monsters you control cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. So, Therion protection, I guess. So it just can't be destroyed by battle. or not by battle, by, well, I mean, they can't be destroyed probably because of Discoliseum, but cannot be destroyed by card effect or battle if you have Discoliseum. And then we have Therion Empress Alasia, completely garbage. I don't know, like, why you would ever play this card. So, this is one of, like, the two cards that are not, like, generic enough to be played, like, outside of probably Therion. So, Foom is just not generic enough, I don't think. And then Therion Yugioh is actually somewhat okay. It's not that bad just to play this, because this is still a decent level for Punk, and it will still protect itself. So it works. It's just it won't protect much else because they're not Therion cards, I guess. And then we have Therion Irregular being pretty interesting that it can took it up to 3 Therion monsters in your graveyard and therefore have like 3 effects. So that's kind of neat to an extent. This card is like a little bit iffy though, but yeah. How can a card be as bad as Alasia? Looking at this card makes me ill. So let's go over this. You can target one Therion monster or one Reptile monster in your graveyard, special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, equip that monster to this card. You can discard one card, then target one Therion monster card in your spell and trap zone, special summon it. The fact that this requires you to discard one card is the absolute, like, worst thing about this. If it didn't have this, it would almost be worth considering, you know, to play, but just with this one discard, it's completely like just impossible to consider. So, what does this do, anyways? Special summon a Therion monster card in your spell and trap zone. So, if we just look at that overall, this allows you to XYZ summon like a rank 8 or something. You know what else allows you to XYZ a rank 8 or something? Therion Lily Borea equipped with literally like any Therion, because then you can just go like Therion Discoliseum, add like second Lily Brea, add Yugioh, add Therion King Regulus, and then you just XYZ summon. Like, why bother with this? Makes literally 0 sense. And also, if we are special summoning Alasia, uh, and we want to use the discard effect to put like a card into the graveyard, right? Like a Therion card. Yo, how did you special summon Alasia to begin with? Oh, you had to put a card into the graveyard. Very counterproductive here. So you're telling me essentially to like that this can discard so we can get our Therions into the graveyard, but we need to get our Therions into the graveyard to get this thing to get our Therions into the graveyard. Do you know how ridiculous that sounds? Well, yeah. And I guess like Therion stand-up's not that great because you can't like maybe if you were to play with this with Teal'c, it might have like some justification, but uh yeah. In general, not looking at this card to be like that great. I guess there is the perk of this being able to like reattach a card like Foom. So if I have to like Therion Regulus send Foom early because my opponent's doing something I absolutely have to negate, I can reattach Foom to Regulus, I guess, off of this effect, so not completely useless. But like Sprite Smashers is completely useless. The effect is to this requires us to banish a Therion card from our hand or graveyard, then activate one of these effects. So the Therion effect is to special summon a Therion monster from your graveyard. Why? That's essentially how I feel about that card when I look at that one. And then Gigantic Champion Sargus, like this doesn't do that much for you except for like searching a Therion card. But interestingly enough, it can search any Therion card. It can search spells, traps, monsters. So that's pretty cool. And aside from that, it's a shame, but you can't really activate the effect to detach material, sadly. So if we could do that, that'd be epic. Pretty much, yeah. But yeah, think there's maybe one way to do that and only one way. It's if we... Is it this one? Nope. It doesn't really work then. Okay. This can add or send one Spriggan's Monster from your deck to the graveyard, I guess. And is there one that like we can banish or something? I think there might have been like a Spriggan's we can banish, right? Banish and then add a card or something. And one Spriggan's Monster with a different name from your graveyard. Okay, yeah, that's not happening. Because if you maybe could, you could use like Spriggan's Blast or something to... Well, I don't know. I guess it would probably have to be like finding a way to special summon Sargus maybe. But like that, I don't know how you're doing this with like Therion. In terms of like Therion, I can't really find a super good way to trigger like Sargus. I guess now that Bamboozling Gossip Shadow is back, at least you could use that, right? Because we have a lot of 3s in this build, so this detaches 2. And whenever it does that, that will trigger, I guess, Sargus. But like, I don't know if I would want to necessarily pair this with Sargus. But yeah. That's essentially all of the Therion Jank that is worth mentioning. Well, I guess there's also this. You can only activate one Therion charge per turn. And you can only activate one Therion Discalcium per turn. Meaning if like Baron negates either of these, you can use a second one from your hand. And this does not work like that. So that's a thing, I guess. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.